Welcome to Peace Now. My name is Trudy Quaife. I'm a member of Bethlehem Neighbors for Peace. We're a local organization of friends and neighbors, and we've been advocating for peace and justice for well over a decade. I'm your host today, and I'm joined by John Amidon. Thanks for being here, John.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
John is well known in the Capital Region for his activism. He's a president of the local chapter of Veterans for Peace. He's also president of the Interfaith Alliance for Peace, the local chapter.
Oh, it's the Interfaith Alliance in New York State.
Interfaith Alliance of New York State. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. John is well known locally and nationally for his peace activism, and we'll go ahead and get into that.
Okay.
John, could you start out by telling us a little bit about how you got involved in activism?
Basically I started going to Central America in the late 80s, 89, 90, and I saw, the violence in these societies, but primarily in Guatemala. And then I learned about the School of the Americas, and from there I started working to close the School of the Americas because we were training Latin military in Fort Benning, Georgia, and the military we trained, we brought up, they were trained in Spanish, and they would go home and they would actually end up killing the union organizers, priests, educators, people who worked with the poor, social workers, a massive state of oppression. The school was so vile, it was actually kicked out of Panama. It was originally Panama, and it was called dubbed the School of the Assassins. Because there was so much congressional opposition and public opposition to it, it was closed for a month, and they changed the name to WINSEC, the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation. And that was a bit of subterfuge, and unfortunately the school is still open. Mm-hmm. It's Father Roy Bourgeois was the founder, or one of the founders, primary founder of the movement, and still working to close the School of the Americas.
Mm-hmm. So when did you start working on that? Would that have been in the 80s?
No, it was actually in the early 90s I really got involved in working on closing the School of the Americas.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What other organizations did you work with early on?
Well, early on, before the Iraq War started, there weren't a lot of truly active organizations that I knew of here in Albany. And so I worked primarily by myself, and but we kept going, and in '98 we founded the Kateri Peace Conference, and that was, the conference's roots are in closing the School of the Americas also. Mm-hmm. What happened was, primarily the people being oppressed were Indians and Catholics in Latin America, and so I thought, where's a place with Indians and Catholics here? And the Kateri Shrine was the place in Fonda, New York. So the first two conferences actually technically were pilgrimages, and a group of us walked from the shrine to the federal building to bring awareness to the School of the Americas and the need to close it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how did the goal of the conference change over time? Initially,
it changed because I realized a lot of people didn't have time to walk, so we couldn't really keep doing the pilgrimage and reach a lot of people, so we changed it to a conference, and I thought I could reach more people. Mm-hmm. And since we had a whole day for education, actually Friday night and Saturday, we would cover a variety of different concerns, and they keep changing.
So what kind of issues have you addressed at this conference over the years? I know it's been 17, this will be the 17th year?
Yeah,
we've in 2015?
Yeah, we've addressed many different issues, and unfortunately all of the problems are still existing. But anyway, we've addressed Israel-Palestine to some degree. We've addressed drones, nuclear weapons, fracking, healthcare. We've looked at our relationships with Iran and Syria, and the list goes on.
I thought of a few of the people that I've heard speak at the Kateri conference over the few years. Maybe you could just comment a little bit on some of these people. Some of the people that really stood out in my mind: Kathy Kelly, retired Colonel Ann Wright, Bill Quigley, Cynthia Banas, Ed Canane. The list goes on and on.
Yeah, we've been really blessed. I mean, so many wonderful people have come over the years, and as you mentioned, Kathy Kelly, who's truly exceptional and just a wonderful speaker. And but we've also had Falva Roy Bourgeois, and he founded, as I mentioned earlier, the School of the Americas Watch movement. And we've had Father Louis Vitale, a Franciscan priest who's West Coast based, and he worked primarily on nuclear weapons and anti-drone work. Blaise Bonpane does a radio show out in, I think it's San Francisco, addressing many different social issues. You mentioned Bill Quigley, who is a great trial lawyer and handled Megan Rice's case on Michael Wally's in the Oak Ridge 3 case, where the three of them entered the Y-12 complex to bring awareness to our need to rid ourselves of nuclear weapons and the government's non-compliance. We've also had a lot of other folks who've come and have been really marvelous, like Randy Keller from Massachusetts and tax resistance, and early on Ann Tiffany spoke, and I'm trying to, you mentioned Colonel Ann Wright, who is always a wonderful speaker. She resigned over Bush's Iraq war policies, and she was in the Army, retired, and when there was a diplomat, and knew the truth, wouldn't put up with the lies and misinformation.
Didn't you have Ray McGovern?
Yes, we had Ray McGovern, and he was he used to do briefings for the presidents and intelligence briefings. Former CIA, wonderful speaker, a wonderful man. And right now some of the other names are eluding me, as they always would.
No,
but
you've covered quite a few, and also you have workshops as well, and then a
yeah,
retreat.
I mean, we've had Kathy Breen, who's a Catholic worker from New York City who travels to New York. We've had Brian Terrell, works with Kathy Kelly in Voices for Creative Nonviolence, and he's traveled worldwide, and he's primarily he does many things, but he's been working very hard on the drone issue, the drone assassination program, and trying to get the government to stop using weaponized drones like so many of us have.
Well, we're talking about drones. That seems to be part of the theme for the last several years, isn't it? Partly because of the actions out at Hancock Air Force Base?
Yeah. The drones at Hancock Air Force Base have been a very important issue because that's in our backyard, and I've been going up there, and I've been arrested, several times up there, and that brings me to other people from that area with Ellen Grady and the Grady family, are prominent activists, and Ellen spoke at our conference, and David Swanson, of course, was really a brilliant speaker. And when I went to Iran and Iraq, not Iraq, but Iran and Syria, I mean, I went with Academics for Peace, and so other people who spoke were Stephen Bronner, professor at Rutgers, brilliant man, Larry Davidson, his wife Janet Amidon. We've had so many wonderful speakers, and as we go along, I'm sure I'll remember more, because when you touch upon workshops and different areas, they just start coming to mind.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Well, while we're on drones, for people that might not understand, why are you so opposed to the use of drones? Some people have said to me, well, then our own military people aren't killed. Why do you think drones are so bad, John?
Well, there's a number of reasons why weaponized drones are really awful. Partially because we've evolved to a state where we don't even know who we are killing anymore. The CIA has what they call signature killings. The signature killings are killing by profile. They do double tapping. Double tapping is horrific. And what that means is when a target is hit, and then responders come, people who live there, and they may be the firemen or the first aid people or their neighbors who just want to come out and help. And so they come and they gather around and they try to help the people who have been hit. And so they send in a second missile, a double tap, and they kill all of these people too, because they feel they might also kill some more militants, but they don't actually know who they're killing. And then they even were killing by megadata, and what that means is if you had a cell phone and you were a target, they would track the cell phone, and if you handed your cell phone off to another person and they called a strike, they were actually calling the strike on the cell phone signal and not knowing who they're killing. So what's happened, and there are different reports, but Reprieve, a human rights watch group, charity, did a study, and they found that for every intended target, 28 innocent civilians were being killed.
I remember reading that.
And that's a credible report. The other thing is like everybody says it saves our troops' lives. Well, hey, our troops shouldn't be there in the first place. You really want to save their lives, bring them home.
Right.
These wars are not in the defense of the nation. Iraq never attacked us. They weren't part of 9/11, and we were lied to. I mean, that's so well documented how Bush lied to us, and the story kept changing, and the war is not in defense of the nation, and our sons and daughters should have never been sent, and they should not be there now. Bring them home.
Good point. Plus, these drones are being used all over in the Middle East, right? Somalia,
Yemen, Somalia,
Afghanistan.
Pakistan, Afghanistan. Israelis are using drones in Gaza, and there are places that we don't even know they're being used. There are surveillance flights flown in upstate New York over the Adirondack mountains for training purposes, and there are flights along the borders. And as things progress, they'll probably be giving us traffic tickets pretty soon. I've heard that proposed as a use.
Using the drones?
Yeah, take a picture, clock your speed. And
Well, they are using them now to monitor traffic, right? Among other things, and monitor protesters as well.
yeah, they, as best I know, it's really hard to know exactly what's being done sometimes, particularly with the CIA. But we know there are training flights over the Adirondacks, and a good part of New York State is cleared. Thanks, goes to Senator Schumer, and I'm not really happy about it, Chuck.
Well, I think that's a good reason to make drones an issue at the Peace Conference every year, because it is so critical, and the drones are being flown. Some of them are being flown from Syracuse, New York, which is just down the road.
Yeah, just down the road.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the Kateri Conference in terms of themes.
Yeah, this year the theme is Truth Tellers, and it's radical honesty in the age of deception.
Who are some of the people that will be speaking at this conference?
We have, excuse me, we have, well, actually what the problem is I want to get first to the idea of the theme.
Oh,
We've
okay.
been told,
Go ahead.
we've been told that if you tell a lie often enough, it creates a truth. Repeat a lie over and over again and it becomes a truth. And we've seen that used as a political device. Unfortunately, when you disconnect from the truth, you're disconnecting from reality. And pretty soon you're paying this tremendously heavy price because you're thoroughly delusional and misguided, and that pretty much spells out quite a lot of our government at this point. And there are two ways that people fool themselves, and it's either being deceived with incorrect information, or in some cases, a lot of people I know refuse to believe what's true. The facts are in front of them, but they simply refuse to believe it.
Too painful.
So we've decided to bring in truth tellers, and we have amazing examples. Edward Snowden, obviously he's not coming, but Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning are certainly two of them, and Julian Assange, and they've all lost their freedom for truth. But so who do we have? We have Matthew Ho coming, and he's a gentleman who was in the Army and State Department official, and he too resigned. We have Medea Benjamin, co-founder of Code Pink. She's coming, and she's well known for just for tremendous activism on so many different issues and writing books and speaking. And you've seen her on the news counseling President Obama from afar, but nonetheless giving her advice to him. And great job, Medea, really tremendous.
She has consistently done wonderful work.
We also have Sister Megan Rice coming. And Sister Megan, as you know, or maybe you don't know, she was an 82-year-old woman who entered the Y-12 Oak Ridge plan and walked all the way up to the vault with Michael Wally and Greg Deorge Obed. And they were unfortunately convicted of sabotage, which has been overturned. And they were just recently released from prison. And I give you all that detail because there is, she and Michael and Greg have a resentencing hearing in July. So there's a small chance that they might not be able to attend, depending on what happens in the resentencing hearing. And their work is to abolish nuclear weapons, and they've demonstrated there is no security with nuclear weapons. We can't use them. Why can't we use them? 300 nuclear weapons detonated in large cities creates, nuclear fires, puts enough smoke and soot into the high atmosphere to block 70% of the sunlight for 10 years. We have nuclear famine. That means just about all large mammals will starve to death in 2 years' time. We'll be out of food. We can't use these weapons. How many? 300 detonations. Pretty much, shuffles the deck. Humanity is out of the picture. Even if 50 were used, we would have tremendous difficulties. So how many does the United States and Russia have? We each have roughly 5,000. The figures keep changing, but they're in the neighborhood of 5,000. We need to get rid of them. Even if you brought it down to 900, you would still have 3 times the amount you need to destroy the world. And this is just 300 weapons in a unilateral explosions in a unilateral attack. It's it's mad, with mutually assured destruction, and it is mad. And so, what is the government doing? It's proposing to spend $1 trillion in the next 30 years to rebuild our nuclear weapons delivery systems, and it's in total violation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty.
Right.
So we really need people, everybody, to start speaking out on these issues and be concerned.
Well, that reminds me of a photo I saw recently of you at the UN back in April of 2015.
No, the UN was actually just last month.
Okay.
The picture I think you were referring to as Vandenberg was...
Well, there was a picture of you in front of the UN,
and
weren't you protesting nuclear proliferation? Wasn't that what?
No, actually, the picture in the UN is inside the Great Hall, and I was a delegate to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. I was a delegate for the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation. So I got in to witness and hear many of the worldwide, delegates from all of the countries who've signed the treaty come and speak about the problems in its implementation and how we might move forward. And then at the UN there are a lot of side events where both countries put on workshops to address different nuclear issues and non-governmental organizations. And while it went on for well over a month, and or about a month, just ended, I think it was April 22nd. No, wait a minute. I'm a little confused on the dates. It was May 22nd. So, and it was really trying to get the major nuclear powers to, particularly the United States, to start living up to its obligations to disarm. And of course we're not.
Okay. Well, I know we're jumping around a little bit here. We've got about 10 minutes left.
Okay.
So maybe a few final thoughts about Kateri. Where is the Kateri Peace Conference going in the future? This is your 17th year. Will you keep going? And are there other issues that you want to address that maybe you haven't addressed yet at the conference? And
well, We hope to keep going. If anybody out there is quite a bit younger than myself, we need some young blood and people who are willing to work hard and for free. And it's quite rewarding developing a conference each year, but there is a point in time where it will end if somebody younger doesn't appear and want to do this work, and many younger people. But the conference is in its 17th year, and I mean each year thematically it develops out of primarily what's happening around us that year, and there's different energies, and then speakers who are available to us who come. Most everybody comes free of charge. So we don't actually know from year to year what we'll be addressing, but all of these concerns will still be here, unfortunately.
So there are workshops and there are speakers, and there's also a retreat involved every year.
Yeah, we have a spiritual retreat. We've added, that started about 4 years ago. And that's for, folks who are interested in pursuing the spiritual end of things and a bit of grounding and quiet time and reflection.
Okay. Well, I know that you're involved in a lot more than just the Kateri Peace Conference. So maybe let's talk about some of the other things. Nationally, you're pretty well known for your activism. Several locations come to mind. One of the first times I heard about you was a protest you did at the Vandenberg Air Force Base, and that had to do with the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, right?
Yeah, well, it has to do with launching Minuteman III missiles on test flights.
Okay.
So a Minuteman III missile was being launched, and we were protesting the launch of it and hoping to prevent it from being launched. So
maybe for people who haven't ever been to a protest or seen a protest, what's that like?
Well, it depends. Yeah, it really depends. It's very different things happen at different places. In this place, we simply walked towards the gate to address the officials with our grievances and why this launch shouldn't take place. And we were subsequently arrested for trespass. And as that turned out, the charges were dismissed against us with prejudice against the government. What a wonderful group of people, and it was just a great experience all the way around. Different arrests are very different, and then the court processing is very different. At my most recent arrest at Creech Air Force Base, we did a die-in in front of the main group, the group I was in. And a die-in, for the folks who don't know, you lay down in the street as if you were just hit by a Hellfire missile and you're a dead body laying in the road. And the intent there was to obviously bring awareness to the illegality of the drone warfare program, but also to stop drone pilots. We hoped we could, it's a symbolic act for sure. There are many gates to the base, but we wanted to symbolically at least stop drone pilots so they couldn't, in theory, execute people while they were outside. And then that was really interesting. Some folks were arrested for trespass, some for actually 10 people, and we don't know why. Their charges were just changed to a violation, and the violation they changed it to was really, in essence, hitchhiking. Very odd.
Now, is the protest that you do at Creech Air Force Base, you do in Nevada, do you do that every year? Is that an annual event, or is that just recently?
Well, the Shutdown Creech event was the first time this year, but there's also the Nevada Desert Experience Sacred Peace Walk, where we also protested Creech Air Force Base, and that's been a peace walk that's been going on well over 20 years now, from the mid-'80s.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Who goes to the peace walk?
It's a variety of different folks, and you spend about a week walking through the desert, and it's really beautiful. If you have a week to spend walking, the desert in March or April is a lovely place outside of Nevada, right outside of, not Nevada, but Las Vegas. And you walk to actually the Nevada test site in Mercury, past Indian Springs. You get a lot of quiet time. You get to reflect. It's for some of us, I mean, I've done it, I guess 7, 8, 9 times now. I've gone out. It's become almost a yearly pilgrimage, and it has a strong spiritual component. We have Johnny Bob, who's a Western Shoshone spiritual person, and he conducts sunrise ceremonies, and then we have other folks doing different types of spirituality. Usually there's a priest and a mass, or stations and the crosses, because it is during Holy Week. And then we do the protests. And, there's often arrests at Creech Air Force Base and at the Nevada Test Site, which is now called the National Nevada Security Site. Or maybe it's, I think that's what it is, National Nevada Security Site. So, and that arrest is more of a ritual arrest, in that you're issued a ticket, and they, we don't pay them because they've told us don't bother, we're never going to issue a warrant. It's kind of a quid pro quo arrangement. But nonetheless, you have to overcome some fear. You will have the experience of being arrested, but it'll be a gentle arrest, and then you'll be released. And
now, for people who may have never even thought about this before, why would you want to be arrested?
It's a way of bringing issues to the court, because let's face it, our legislative bodies have failed us, and the executive branch of the government has failed us, and sometimes we actually have success in the courts. Mostly not, but sometimes we do. And we have to keep trying, because the issues at hand are so vitally important. We have nuclear weapons that need to be dismantled. We have nuclear, and the whole nuclear industry. We have nuclear power plants. I mean, we've seen Chernobyl, we've seen Fukushima, and the destruction and they cause, and the cancer-related deaths, and the pollution of food sources. So we have nuclear waste all over the country, and by every body of fresh water. Something needs to be done with it, rather than just hoping that nothing is going to happen while this poisonous waste lasts for thousands upon thousands of years. We really need to start living sensibly, thinking sensibly, taking care of some of these problems. So, and the drone assassination programs creates more enemies for us than people we're killing. And we should not be killing innocent people.
No, it's murder.
It's murder.
Well, for the person who's listening to you, who's thinking, well, gee, maybe I should get more involved, maybe I should become more of an activist, what would you suggest?
Yeah, I would suggest that you go out and join any number of different great peace organizations, including Bethlehem Neighbors for Peace, or Women Against War, or Veterans for Peace, and the Interfaith Alliance of New York State does quite a bit to address important issues, be they war and peace issues, drones, nuclear weapons, but we also address, prison reform issues, and parole, solitary confinement, and just the need for money for public defenders. And we also look at nonviolent communications. There's a whole host of issues that any number of our organizations address. So join an organization, and
how would people find out more about the Interfaith Alliance?
Well, you could simply Google it online, and you would pull up our website, which we need to get updated, quite honestly, but that could give us contact. Our next, so I mean, that's one simple way, and it's not hard to find peace organizations if you want to look. You could also come to the Quaker meeting, and you'd meet folks there who are involved in peace testimony on many different levels.
Okay. Any final thoughts? What's in your future, John? What are you going to be working on next?
Well, right now I have the conference right in front of me. I'm working on a campaign to really expose the drone assassination program, with a series of graphics that we're developing. When the Interfaith Alliance is about ready to issue a letter supporting 2 bills in Congress, the House to abolish nuclear weapons, and and that's the only, I'm not remembering those numbers, so maybe I could quickly find those.
Okay,
And but anyway, those are some of the things I'm working on.
okay, all right. Well, we're right down to the last minute here.
Okay, HR 1976 by a wonderful Congresswoman, Eleanor Holmes Norton, and is a bill we should support.
Okay.
And HR 1534 would be helpful.
Okay,
We don't have time to.
we don't.
But anyway, thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for joining me here today, and thank you all for joining us, and please join us for future shows where we'll be talking more about drones and about how the wars have affected our economies. Thank you.
Bring them home, bring them home, bring our parents, our children home, from the dust of Afghanistan back to our arms, bring them home.
Bring them home, bring them home, bring our sons and our daughters home, from the ghettos of Baghdad back to our arms, bring them home.